Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. My name is Lord Watson. I'm the founder and CEO of the Penny Foundation. We are based out of Birmingham, Alabama. We are a community chest that's seeking to eliminate economic inequality in the Black community. And so I am grateful and excited to have a chance to be able to welcome you to this webinar. This webinar, where we talk about Black business is Black philanthropy. For the past 3 years, the Penny Foundation, the Poise Foundation out of Pittsburgh, the Prosperity Foundation out of New Haven, Connecticut, we have taken the time in August to come together and to have a conversation amongst organizations about this important topic of philanthropy. As you know, that August is Black Philanthropy Month, but August is also Black Business Month, and so we believe that it was a great opportunity to bring those two ideas or those two topics together and to talk about the importance and the relationship between both business and philanthropy, particularly when it comes to the Black community. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ursula, and she will introduce our moderator for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord, and welcome everyone, as Lord has stated, to our annual Black Philanthropy Month conversation. And so I have the honor of introducing our moderator for this morning, and his name is Joe Scantlebury. Joe is the president and CEO of Living Cities, a 30-year collaborative of prominent foundations and financial institutions committed to working together to close racial income and wealth gaps, so that all people in American cities are economically secure, build wealth, and live thriving, abundant, and connected lives. But prior to joining Living Cities, Joe held philanthropic leaderships at the W.K. Kellogg Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and advocated for the legal and aspirational interests of children, families, and community-based organizations. I don't want to waste any more of this precious time on a long introduction, but Joe has a wonderful curriculum vitae that you may look up on LinkedIn or also on any platform where you just Google Joe Scantlebury, and there you will find the rest of his excellent bio. And now I turn it over to our moderator.
Thank you, Ursula. Thank you, Lord, for this wonderful invitation, and happy to be with all of you. I'm going to dive right in because this is a very exciting conversation we're going to have today. As you know, just to plug on Living Cities for a minute, this conversation is so aligned to how we think about our vision, and that is that all people in U.S. cities are economically secure, build wealth, and are living abundant, dignified, and connected lives. And when Lord reached out to me, I knew this was exactly the conversation you all were planning to have. So grateful to be part of it. Now, with no further ado, we have a dynamic, powerful panel, and I want to just get them rolling. With us today, we have Donna Leckie. Donna is the founder of Health Venture, a foundry that launches global digital health startups with venture capital funding and advisory services. She is a board member of the Prosperity Foundation and serves on the state and local tax advisory board of New York University School of Law. That's my alma mater. Thank you, Donna. She's also an associate fellow at Pearson College at Yale University. Welcome, Donna. We also have Greg Spencer. Greg is the chairman of the board of the Poise Foundation. He serves on the Pittsburgh Theological Seminary Executive Finance and Governance Committee. He also serves on the board of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, where he chairs the board's Inclusion and Diversity Committee and is a member of the Executive Compensation and the Governance and Nomination Committees of the $24 billion world-renowned healthcare provider and insurer based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Welcome, Greg. And last but not least, we have Herschel Hamilton. Herschel Hamilton is an experienced corporate leader with a demonstrated history of working in the commercial real estate industry. He is skilled in negotiation, project finance, fundraising, startup ventures, and strategic planning. Herschel is the CEO of Block Global, a commercial real estate services firm whose body of work contributes to the economic development, innovation, and revitalization of American cities. Herschel, we got to talk. The company provides professional services to electric utility companies who deploy smart grid and smart city infrastructure projects. Additionally, Herschel serves as an active board member for the Penny Foundation. Welcome all, welcome all. Please welcome our panelists. Good morning. Oh, did we lose Donna? Okay, she's going to come back in. And for all of you watching this is what technology is. We've all been here for the last 2 years. Things happen, and hopefully we'll get Donna very quickly. As I did our introduction, just to give Donna a little time to rejoin us, is there anything we left out? You captured who you gentlemen are.
I think you did a really good job for sure.
Yes. We're fine.
Okay. I'm gonna wait for Donna, but this conversation that we're gonna have today is pretty central. We've been asking the question around excellence in business, connections in philanthropy, and we're going to take questions from the audience. So I'm hoping those of you who are watching are teeing up your questions. If you put them in the chat, I'll certainly pick them up. But I just want to start off with just sort of a broad question. What does excellence in business look like to both of you? And Donna, welcome. We thought we lost you. Welcome back.
No, actually, I had a bad connection, so I'm on my phone. Hopefully, I don't look too crazy in terms of top. Yeah, there we go. That's cool.
There you go.
That's all right. We've been in Zoom land for a couple of years. Everybody watching is used to this now. So whatever happens, and we'll pull you back in.
We'll work it out.
What does excellence look like to all of you? When you think about excellence in business in particular, what does it look like? What should we be looking for, holding ourselves accountable for? What does it look like?
I would venture to say that excellence means that we are doing all we can to exceed every expectation or challenge that's out there. Excellence is a driver. In business, it's important to be excellent. It's important to be as good as, and definitely oftentimes better than anyone else. From a Black business standpoint, unfortunately, people that may not look like us may feel that we are just okay, but it's important for Black businesses to be the best that they can be in providing whatever products and services we produce.
Yeah, I agree with you. As a core tenet of business, at the end of the day, what we hang our hat on our ability to deliver the products and services that we provide to customers, regardless of what our ethnic identities are. And so what we say to people is that first, we're a good business. Second, we're a majority African-American owned business, because that's the thing that really matters. Your client, we're in a period of time where clients rely on the people that provide critical services to them. And we have to be relevant, and we have to be reliable. And that's what, when you talk about excellence in business, that's the primary tenet. And so, we strive to be that. We always ask ourselves, what is it like for our customers to do business with us? We ask that question because, we have to be able to self-evaluate and make determinations about the experience that customers have with us. And so that all goes into the whole notion of, being an excellent provider of products and services.
From my perspective, I view it a little bit differently from the perspective that we are a business that happens to be Black. And the reason why I phrase it that way is because there are business principles, business tenets that every business should follow. And that's organizational, making sure that you are organized, as a business, that you have operational plans that you're following, that you're doing your analysis associated with your budget versus your actual, and understanding those variances, whether they swing one way or the other, understanding the mission and the vision of your company. And sometimes you have to iterate what that looks like, because it has to be sometimes a fluid situation. And I think that businesses have to be, what excellence to me means, that the measuring stick is not somebody else's business. They can be an idea as a platform, but you have to be very clear about what the focus drive is with respect to the business, and continue to grow and learn in that business. Because again, especially think of technology, very fluid. You got to be able to stay on top of it. So excellence to me means that I'm my own measuring stick. My business is my measuring stick. I bump up against other great, smart, strong businesses, but they're not the litmus for me, because to the point that was made from Greg, at the end of the day, it's about exceeding the expectations of what you said you were going to do, and to do it well.
Let me press a little bit, because I am curious, and all of you have in the work that you do, you touch capital, and I wonder, as you seek to access capital for various ventures, various ideas, does that excellence come through because of the history of your work, or is there the extra question? The extra question meaning, yeah, we see your track record, we see your history, but can you do this, and should we invest in you? Do you find that your history of excellence actually opens the door more easily, or are you still being asked the questions that you were asked in your early years?
I would say from my perspective, first of all, you don't have to go very far. You can look at the numbers. When you think about the trillions of dollars that are out there available in terms of capital and raising capital, women are at roughly around 2%. Black women are roughly around 0.001% in their ability to raise capital. And it has everything to do with perception, that particularly if you're in a firm that is raising capital for its clients, or you are a venture capitalist such as myself, and you're looking to bring in talent in business, and whether or not you're going to invest in those businesses, it's very difficult, and has been very difficult, to raise capital. And my Yale pedigree, my law school pedigree, my accounting undergrad, in the top firms that I've worked for in the world before becoming a VC, that has helped from the perspective of looking at the background and looking at the pedigree and saying educationally, check, 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 and check, experience, check, 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 and check. But there's still that, nah, I don't know. Well, and what it often means is that I have to leverage the people that I've come to contact with over the many years, who may or may not look like me, to help me navigate getting into the space and the doors that I need to navigate and get into. So there has to be a recognition that statistically, even if you look at the number of CEOs and CFOs and decision makers, statistically, in terms of where we fit into that equation from a business perspective, we're not represented. So if we're not represented, and people want to work with people who look like them, and they want to give money to people that look like them, although they can squander it, it doesn't matter. You have to stay focused on what you're going to accomplish, but you also have to figure out what level of network you need to get those doors open so that you can get in and perform.
So, John, I just heard you say, and I definitely want to hear from Greg and Hershey.
So as a firm, we let our body of work speak for us, because in our business, we have, a physical trail of what we've done, and it's indicative of our ability to deliver on projects. But at the same time, as it relates to money, you have to have a relationship with capital. For example, if I went out to establish a new relationship with a new capital source, I've got to bring them up to speed. I got to bring them up the curve on as it relates to who I am. But one of the things that we need to do related to our businesses is really develop relationships with capital. For example, there are capital sources I can go to. They know who we are. They know what we've done, and I can easily get capital from these particular sources. But where we often run into the rub and the evaluation and the questions is when we reach out to new capital sources, and it's always, a song and dance. And then when you're a business of color, my sense is that there is an extra layer of evaluation associated with mainstream sources of capital. So what we try to do in order to short circuit that process is, again, develop relationships with capital sources. We like to do transactions with firms that have significant amounts of money. So when they do one deal with us, they want to do additional deals because they can deploy additional capital, through our channels. And so that's the way we have kind of gotten beyond, every time being a new vetting session and, getting around the frustration of having to deal with that time and time again.
I spent the first 30 years of my career in corporate, 3 different industries, and I guess I had demonstrated that I can be successful, at least in the corporate environment, right? So when I left and decided to become an entrepreneur and look towards capital opportunities, I had to go back and deal with the relationships of people that knew me when I was in corporate America. To both points, it is your body of work and your demonstrated capabilities is where people are going to decide whether they want to invest in you. Fair question is that while I was successful in corporate America, doesn't mean that those same type of skills will transfer into an entrepreneurship situation, except for those that I had a networking opportunity because I was fortunate to be in the corporate setting.
So this brings me to where we need to go, because you all laid out excellence, pedigree, experience, and I hope my audio is coming in properly. You've laid out skill. You've laid out enterprise success. You are running successful entities, and yet still we are. And Donna, thank you for laying out the data. We are really just scratching not even the surface of what's available in terms of equity and capital to really grow businesses and create new enterprises in the Black community. So I guess I'm curious what your thoughts are about where we need to go from here. Because I heard social capital, but I also see, and I'm listening to, and I hope the audience who's following us today hears the excellence and the brilliance and the experience that all of you bring to this conversation. So it's not a question of not knowing how. You all clearly know how. Where do we need to go from here?
I think we need to learn to leverage our whether other Black businesses or leverage our community towards working together better and creating more opportunities. One of the things we've talked about at the Poise Foundation is about sustainability and helping organizations become more sustainable, self-sustainability. And so I think really, we just got to find a more effective way of working together and growing and supporting one another as we go out into this marketplace.
So, Greg, I'm going to push you a little bit.
Sure.
If you were describing what that working together could look like, not in all cases, but just in a few examples, could you sort of model that out for us? What could that look like? And what role could philanthropy play in making that possible?
So I'll use a personal example. So I acquired a chemical manufacturing company, and we produce outstanding chemicals used in a lot of different industries. And so when I purchased it, what I should have done was went to a Black distribution company. So I would make the products and he or his firm would actually go out and market and distribute the products. We would have been stronger, right? Instead of me trying to do everything. So that's an example where we're looking at your market, look at your business situation. How can you leverage others to support what you're trying to get done?
Brilliant. Donna, Herschel, any thoughts? Where do we need to go?
So I think philosophically, I think African American businesses really need to examine, the narratives that we create for ourselves. For example, like I hate the term minority-owned business because anytime I sit down at the table and tell the people across the table that I'm a minority-owned business, I'm pigeonholed from that point forward. That I'm minority, which means less than, that I may not have the capability. I need some additional support. And so that is often not the case as it relates to African American owned businesses. And so it kind of goes back to one of the points that I made earlier. We've got to strive to be good businesses, period. And then if it's relevant to our clients that we be diverse or a majority African American owned, then it's relevant to us. And that's one thing that we really, I think just as a community, we really need to move away from, just because, I think psychologically, I think it impacts us and we don't even recognize that it has an impact on us. And then beyond that is, I think it just becomes a function of, really, building businesses beyond 1 and 2 person businesses. The old adage that, within our community, there are 2 million businesses, but a majority of them have, 1 employee. And so we've got to think about how we scale operations, the capital we need, the business processes, the people we need in order to do so. And then as to your point around pooling capital, there's some really interesting companies that have been started around this whole Web3 concept that are actually pooling capital within the diaspora. And they're using, blockchain technology and apps and other means to pull people together to deploy capital for specific uses. And so while we have to, at the same time, move in that way digitally, we've got to do more of that, socially and relationally, so that, to Greg's point earlier, we really began to look for actively and proactively look for opportunities to work with diverse firms out of the chute. As we're working through M&A deals, as we're working through, large scale projects. And I think that'll go a long way towards, really driving us to greater, levels of prosperity.
I would like to echo a sentiment that you just mentioned, Herschel. From my perspective, I don't even use the word minority. There's nothing minor about me. There's nothing minor about anybody that's on this call. And it is a psychological imprint that I think that we need to really address and stop having others give us what the narrative is about us and our businesses. So I'm going to start there. I would agree with what Greg and Herschel have said, so I'm not going to repeat that. But there are 2 points that I did want to make, however. Where do we need to go? The first thing that I think that we need to do as businesses, particularly as Black businesses, is let's stop trying to get the hookup from each other. Let's understand that we have to pay the value for what it is that we're delivering to our each other, to our constituents, to our client community, to our business community, to our networking community. We need to stop trying to undermine and undervalue our own businesses. That's the first thing I want to mention. The second thing that I wanted to mention is that we also have to really start early on building a pipeline and a sourcing pipeline of younger people to bring them up into these businesses so that they learn at a very early age what this is about. So when they're talking about financial terms with respect to raising capital, they're not clueless about what those terms mean. They've experienced it, they've worked in it, they know what the terms mean, and more importantly, they're not tactical in what they're doing, they're strategic in what they're doing. And that's one of the things I would say about how we need to, or where we need to go, in some respects, how we need to get there, is to be less tactical and be more strategic about who we bring into the fold, who are our partners, how do we align with those partners, how are we going to raise capital. Can we go back to the folks that we've gotten capital from before, but also who looks like we do that we've worked with previously that I can connect Herschel or Greg or others with, We've got to do a better job in those areas. But we also have to make sure that when we come to each other, that we're prepared and that we're about the business, about being about the business.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And just to echo your point about bringing younger people into the fold and educating them, one of the things, for example, that I have been doing recently is working with a group of young folks and literally letting them sit in on the meetings and engagements and work that we do, particularly around negotiating transactions, client interfaces, and issues of money and capital, so that it's not a mystery to them. And they understand the nature of the relationships and they understand the dynamics associated with that. So if they continue to work with our organization, they have the ability to just naturally segue into it. But if they elect to do other things, they have the benefit of that knowledge and understanding. Because at the end of the day, it's all about exposure.
Right.
You know, the only difference that our community has as it relates to money and finance, for as an example, is really exposure. Because, you know, other communities have kitchen table conversations around issues of money and capital and preservation and investment. And we traditionally have not had those except in kind of contemporary generations. And so we got to demystify what success is. We got to demystify the definition of success for young people. And we got to demystify the path to success. And we have it, we do it. We just got to share it and make sure that we proactively engage young people and make sure that they get that.
You know, that's one of the values to your earlier question, Joe, about the foundation. You know, we're in a position to convene, right? Convene business leaders, Black business leaders, and to invite younger generations to interact with us. And so I think that's critically important to do that. That's a building we can do. I don't have to worry about knocking heads with the Urban League or the African American Chamber. You know, we can convene and bring folks together over these kind of subjects and discussions. And then from there, someone else can pick up the programming and move forward.
Well, I know we're going to pivot to philanthropy. So, Greg, thanks for the setup. But I did want to just pause for a second and just appreciate two things that you all have been consistently voicing. Number one, we're not minorities. Right? We're in a country that by 2032 will be predominantly people of color. We will be a multicultural plurality. And as Black folks, some of the first people brought here to build the economy that became what we know now, it's actually time for us to do what I'm also hearing you all speak of, and that is to claim ownership rights. Ownership, not an exclusion of anyone else, but ownership as in we are excellent, we are capable, and we know how to build the infrastructure that our community needs, but more importantly, the national economy needs, and we have a role to play in building that. And that's what I keep hearing in all three of your comments. So just want to thank you and make sure we don't skip past that. As we turn to philanthropy, I am curious about, there's a number of key questions I want to ask for this conversation, but I am curious about your experience and exposure to philanthropy and the ways in which you've seen philanthropy help advance excellence in business and community development, and ways in which philanthropy has been less than helpful. And I'm saying that as someone who's been, kind of I thought I'd be in philanthropy for a year or two. I was a practicing litigator, lawyer, and didn't see myself staying in philanthropy. And all of a sudden, it's been a 16-year plus journey. So grateful for the exposure. But I am curious what you all have seen and how philanthropy has been additive and ways in which it may have been, how should I say, less than helpful for the direction all three of you have been really leaning into.
From my perspective, there's definitely the correlation and the importance of giving back, businesses giving back to the communities that they support and really serve, right? I mean, without a client base, without a consumer base, there's not a profit base, if you will. I think that where it's additive, at least from my perspective, where it's additive is where it helps to create a scenario or situation where you're teaching a man or woman to fish and not giving them the fish necessarily. Because what we have to do is make sure that what we're creating is an ecosystem that allows us to build and develop for ourselves. Philanthropy can be a non-additive when you get back into the psyche around this person needs help, or this organization needs help, or this community needs help, but there's no plan for them to be able to help themselves. So I think from my perspective, working with students, and this is sort of the way that I give back, is getting them, not just students, but really like young managers in the, and public accounting firms and in law firms where they may be the only one of, 100 or 200 or 300, being able to give them sort of the roadmap so they won't have to go through what it is that I've gone through in terms of trying to traverse and navigate through those types of traps. But at the same time, once you have it, and you bring a situation or scenario to me around something that you're experiencing, my first question is, based on what you've learned to date from me, how would you navigate the situation? And what would you do differently? And not to mention the fact that now I'm going to hold you accountable for helping that next person who looks like we do and supporting them. So to me, that's philanthropy. And from that perspective, it's not just about giving checks or writing checks. It's about being in the commitment of the community to do what is right and to adhere to the plan and to keep each other accountable for what it is that we're saying that we're going to do, have the metrics determined so that we can measure up against. And where we fall short, understand why that's the case and not rinse and repeat. And also, again, it goes back to the original question, having the excellence around it. Again, philanthropy is business 101 to me. It's the same level of concepts that we work with in the business world. And something that was said earlier is that when we think about or something I said earlier, when we think about philanthropy, I think of now today that people, they want to give. It used to be that folks would give and just write a check, and I can take I can take a deduction on my tax return. But folks are now saying, well, what are the outcomes? Not just giving of my time and my money. What are the outcomes that I'm expecting and this organization is expecting from this? Because we really have to start measuring what that looks like and making sure that we are doing what it is that we're saying that we're doing. Because there are a lot of organizations out here that are literally every year, they're trying to raise money to sustain themselves. Well, that goes back to my fish concept. We have to do a better job in our organization, our planning, our operational work plan, and having those things in order so that we can have a sustainability plan as part of our philanthropy in our philanthropic organizations.
Thank you, Donna.
Yeah, I agree with you, Donna. And I think you can look at it as an investment, really not just giving, but investing in organizations or to do what they need to do based upon their abilities to get the outcome that has been discussed. I do want to go back to an earlier comment that Herschel made. When we talk about showing, teaching, is the exposure. It's important for organizations and people coming up through the business world to get exposed to different types of businesses, not just Black businesses, but majority business as well, and let them understand that they can do whatever it is they put their mind to, as long as they work on outcomes and they're excellent at what they do.
Yeah. I look at philanthropy as really investments in people. And I think that's one of the things that we really need to keep in mind. we make investments in our businesses, we grow our businesses, we make investments in our homes, we make investments in a whole host of other things. But I think we need to, the way I kind of keep myself focused around from a philanthropic perspective is that it is investing in people, because we've got to spend, time and money building people up and building the capacity of individuals, especially within our communities. Because at the end of the day, it's all about sustainability. A business has to be sustainable, a philanthropic organization has to be sustainable, an individual has to be sustainable. And so we've got to begin to invest more and more dollars. And then, one of the really nice things that I'm beginning to see, especially within our community, is that, African American, business people and others, they grind a lot and spend a lot of time grinding, focused on building a business and supporting their families. But there's a point you get to when you realize that it's about more than just you and your family. And I see a lot of African American business people getting to that point and then beginning to refocus on what they can do more broadly. And so, this whole path is a transition. And it's always great when, you embrace that from the beginning. And I think that's what we need to do and instill in young people. But I also see this kind of transition, and that has to do with age and your perspectives around, life and living and, what your legacy will be, where you come to terms with the fact that it's not about you. It's about this broader community. And so how do we help more and more people get to that point of recognition? And then how do we, help those folks get there earlier in life, as opposed to later in life?
So you stole my question there, Herschel, because that is the question I want to pivot to very deeply. So when we think about the role of philanthropy and business working together, and specifically Black folk in philanthropy and philanthropy in service to Black communities and Black business, I'm curious what you all think about the ability for us to get to that realization earlier. And I want to posit a challenge here. So I meet a lot of young people, and I'm sure you all do too, who are ready for the finish line, right? There's a whole lot of journey, but they're ready for the finish line. They're, if you leave your seat too quickly, they'll be in it, right? So they're ready to go. And on one hand, I say, wow, they're ambitious, they're creative, they are, in many respects, well credentialed, and they've got lots of great ideas. But they may not have had the seasoning or the experience that all of you are sharing with us today. And then at the same time, I meet people who have a lot of experience and who've been warriors in the work for a very long time, whether that be in philanthropy, whether that be in business, whether that be in education, and pretty much have a wait your turn. Wait your turn. Well, don't try to push me out of my seat just yet. And I watch those tensions play out. And I often ask myself, wow, how does philanthropy and business bridge this ambition and vision gap that we're having across generations so that we can pull together, work together, learn from the experience of each other? And as you said earlier, how can I not do the distribution and the production? How can I learn that experience today so that we can do, unfortunately, what Samsung did? It said, hey, nice iPhone. We're gonna learn from this and quickly develop a whole new product line because we think we can. And yes, we'll pay some lawsuits, and yes, we'll get sued for patent infringement and everything else, but we're going to build this, do this because we think we have the right to do it. I'm curious what your views are about the ways that philanthropy and business can bridge some of this generational debate, dialogue. Sometimes it's not even a debate. It's just a way that we're showing up, that doesn't bring us together. What are your thoughts?
That's a really, really interesting question. I go back to what I said earlier around having the ability to work with younger people to understand sort of the protocols and the ways in which business is conducted. From, you know, I think there's a lot to be said for my generation. I graduated from undergraduate school in 1984 and really came up through the ranks associated with, you know, working at some of the top firms in the world and being in a position where I was learning from the best of the best of the best. But there was a protocol associated with that. I'll give you a perfect example. When I was at KPMG back in the late 80s, early 90s, during tax season, because my background for nearly 30 years, I was a tax attorney. While I was at the firm, you would not leave the office, even if you were done your work. You would not leave. It could be 1 o'clock in the morning, particularly during tax season. You were not going to leave. You were going to be there with your comrades, despite the fact that you're tired and you're going to be and your work is done. But you did not want to have that perception of you not being a team player. And then you would be back at 7 in the morning to get the day started again. The young people today, they're like, it's 6 o'clock. I've got dinner plans, and I'm going to leave right at 6. So, and I'm not going to come in the weekend because I've got, I've got plans on the weekend as well. And to me, that balance is important because in some respect, they're taking their time back. They're taking their mental health back in some respects. They're taking the opportunity to recognize that there's a place for work and then there's my personal side of my life. And I'm not going to let work be all consuming. Unlike I think my generation was maybe a little bit different. But I say all that to say this, that I think it's important and there needs to be a recognition that balance is important. And I think through philanthropy, the older folks can get together with the younger folks and understand the reasons why we did certain things a certain way. And them understanding that, maybe they'll slow their roll a little bit when it comes to, I want the position right now. I want to get paid X right now. They'll be a bit more patient and understanding because they'll understand the process. As well as for those of us who've been workaholics through those, younger periods in our lives and probably still today, that we can take a page out of their book and say, you know what, let me relax. When I say I'm off the grid, I'm off the grid. I'm not taking a call. I'm not going on my emails, and really, again, work together to understand it. So I think the philanthropy goes both ways between the younger and the older generation. And I also think that we should have a respect for them, because oftentimes we want to be dismissive about the way in which they do things, but a lot of it's just a communication of the why of it. And I think we all have to do a better job with each other in understanding that.
Herschel, Greg, you want to tap in on this? Thank you, Donna.
Yeah, look, this is really interesting. Like this multi-generational, intergenerational engagement. I think it's, to Donna's point, I think it's just a function of just trying to be patient as it relates to how you interact and engage. My son does things a little bit differently than I do. It's the joke in my office is if you leave at like 4 or 5 o'clock, I ask people, what, you just working a half day today? and so a lot of young people just, they look at things differently. But I think that at the end of the day, the common theme is really, you can find common ground around impact, because what's obvious today to both young people and older people are the ills that exist throughout our society. They've been laid bare over the last 3 or 4 years. And so there is no question, years pre-pandemic, there were questions about, that's just your generational thing, and now everybody sees the issues that exist. And so young people and older people are dialed in on what those issues are. And I think the common thread is we understand that impact needs to occur. And there are a number of different ways to get to that impact. And we can do that through philanthropy. And so it becomes a function of how do we align with, though our common interests around, different philanthropic causes. The Penny Foundation, which I'm on the board of, is doing significant work in Birmingham and really pushing the envelope from a standpoint of really attempting to engage around those issues. And, I'm probably one of the dinosaurs on the Penny Foundation's board, but it's really refreshing for me to work with younger people who are doing a lot of things and who are moving more aggressively, but who I can just provide insight to periodically and say, well, hey, that's great, but these things actually are going to need to happen. They have to happen first in order before we get to this point. And so it's, I think it becomes more symbiotic. And I think that's where we're headed as a community, especially intergenerationally. And so, no magic bullets associated with that. I think it's just a function of, recognizing and understanding these common goals that exist and the issues that exist in our community that are no longer a mystery.
Greg, before you tap in, I'm going to make sure we start interspersing our conversation with the questions that are starting to come up in the chat. And I want to invite anyone watching to please put your questions in the chat so we can get them in as well. So it's going to move fast because already it's 11:46, 14 minutes, and we're going to be closing. This is way too little time for the power of this conversation. Greg, what are your thoughts on the generational question?
So at the same time, Joe, I won't add any comments on what Donna and Herschel said because I agree with them 100%. So let me deal with the issue you just raised that's in the chat. So Pittsburgh is blessed with a lot of private foundations, big, well-endowed foundations, but none of them know Pittsburgh Black community like the Poise Foundation, right? They really don't. We know what's going on in our community and where the needs are and how they need to be addressed. So we've been fortunate that some of the larger foundations support us financially so that we in turn can go put money into the foundation, into our community. And that has worked well. And during the pandemic, we did outstanding work. Some of the work we didn't have ourselves the ability to finance, but large private and public foundations supported the work that we did. So that's how we've been able to leverage our giving and making a difference in our community and using their resources in addition to ours.
I think one of the things that's really that I will take note of with respect to the Prosperity Foundation in New Haven, actually are a couple things. The first is that we have an amazing chair, Howard Hill. We've got an amazing ED, Ursula Hughes, pounding the pavements in the community, not just amongst those who are being served and supported, but also creating an expectation that it's about each one, teach one. So there's an expectation that we expect for you to come back and to give and to create funds within the organization, because that's the other piece of it. We're all finance people. At the end of the day, that's part of it as well. Being able to create within the foundation the funds that will support and again sustain the organization. And I think also part of it is partnering with other foundations that look like us, because there's some of the work that we can do that they may not be able. So the leverage of that is really critically important as well. And to be able to support each other financially, to really do the work, the homework, to work together. So I should be calling Herschel on the Penny Foundation and saying, hey, you know what? I know in Birmingham, because I used to live there, I know in Birmingham there's this organization or this company, they're looking to give this X amount of dollars. To be on the lookout for those things and to be able to co-communicate with each other on what's out there, what's available, and bringing that to each other's attention. To me, we are the ecosystem. And I think we've got to do a better job connecting and communicating with each other on maybe a quarterly basis, as opposed to one-off situations where we have this particular forum. I think we need to be in much more communication with each other. What's going on? What do you know? What's Ford doing? Are they supporting this? What about Google? What about, to be able to have that level of communication? So it's more like a consortium of foundations that look like we do, that are supporting each other and supporting the community that we serve. But also, again, it's the accountability portion of it. Support by way of each one teach one, and have the community that we're servicing through grants, et cetera, give them the opportunity to support the foundation so that we can continue to advance on the work that we're doing in the community.
So one of the questions that came up, Donna, just specific to philanthropic collaboration, is this question around the direct competition that Black foundations, particularly community foundations, face with white community foundations. And I think you all know that white community foundations have come under fire from NCRP and others for their lack of responsiveness to Black communities, and are now being looked at in a very intentional way. They don't like it, by the way. When people say you're in the community and you're not serving the community, they don't like that. That said, I'm curious what you all are thinking about with regard to how we engage to shift the power, shift the support. Because in many respects, as community foundations, you're receiving funds from lots of sources, and you're in competition with, the white community foundation in the very same community.
One thing there's a couple of things I would say. Mm-hmm. The thing that we got to be real careful about is, we've experienced this, where other white organizations or community foundations literally have taken our footprint, our wording, our narrative, and now have created programming that's directly targeted to our community, but utilizing the Prosperity Foundation information. We've got to hold these organizations accountable, and we got to ask them the why of it. Because it's not, to me, I'm not going to get into them saying that there's competition from the perspective. You don't know our community like we know our community. So there is no competition as far as I'm concerned. Right. There is no competition. But we have to make them accountable for plagiarism, is what I'll call it. Because it's really unfortunate that they've not come to us to say, how can we partner with you? Since you do know this community so well, how can we partner with you? Because it's from my perspective, it's not about throwing something up against the wall to see whether or not it's going to stick. It's all about sustainability in an effort to create generational wealth. That's how we have to look at this thing. What they're doing is they're just saying, well, there's a need in the community, going back to the psyche and the old way of thinking that we're just going to throw money at the problem. But when the money runs out, then what happens, right? And we've got to get out of this narrative of sort of scratching and struggle, and really understand that there is value in what it is that we're bringing to the table. But again, to hold them accountable for when they do plagiarize, that, look, we're looking to partner. We recognize that you've taken our materials and you've used our materials. But at the same time, let's work together to support a community, and we will run the programs that support us. So you can give those extra dollars that you siphoned from your community foundation and give them to us, and let us do our work.
So we're at 12:50. Excuse me, we're at 11:53. I want to make sure that we save the last 5 minutes for Mark Lewis, because I think he's going to close us out. So that gives us a really, really tight window to do a couple of things quickly. So this is almost a lightning round, guys. I want you to think about the things that you wish we had talked about and the things you would wish you had said and had been able to get through, and try to get that through. But there was also a question that was raised earlier by, I think it's Babs Alexander, about city of New Haven specifically, and the multi-ethnic community that's there, and how we actually, as a Black people, interact with the diversity we see around us as well. So I want to put that little spice in your lightning round response and see where we go. And then Mark, I think you'll be teed up after that. Who wants to start? Lightning round, final thoughts.
Well, since it's a lightning round and somebody needs to get started, I'll get started. The thing that I wish that we could have talked a little bit more about is trust. We need to trust each other more as a Black community. We need to, but we also need to earn the trust of each other. And that goes back to having those best practices in terms of excellence, being able to run a business, whether it's philanthropic or for-profit business. And we need to support each other better than we've had in the past. I would say that in terms of the city of New Haven, I'm sort of new to the city of New Haven. I would say, however, that there seems to be some level of divide that's being created between the Black and Brown community. We just need to stop that. My focus, quite frankly, is my community, the Black community, and that's kind of where I'd like to put my emphasis and my energy and my effort to get us where we needed to be, but also partner with other communities as well.
Thank you.
So I just want to add to, but excuse me, Herschel.
No, go ahead, Greg.
I just want to piggyback on what Donna said. And I just thought it was in Pittsburgh. The Black folks don't trust one another. And I don't understand why it's so difficult to trust. I grew up here in Pittsburgh, went away to Wilberforce for a little while, served in the military for a while. My entire career life has been here in Pittsburgh, but trying to move forward has been difficult for Black folks to talk to one another. We're not a diverse city or community or region. There are very few Hispanics and other or folks in the city of Pittsburgh. So I'm just trying to make sure and do everything we can to make Pittsburghers be more open to people coming in and trust one another in the Black community.
Thank you, Greg. Herschel?
Yeah, I just say as it relates to, like white community foundations, we got to find a way to make them aware of the error of their previous ways around allocations of money and interaction with Black foundations, because traditionally what they've done is, they found some of their, they traditionally allocate money to people that they know, and they think that they have the ability to solve issues that exist in communities of color. And the reality is that they don't, but they feel good about giving that money because they're really not focused on impact. And so one of the things that I have seen is when leadership changes at those traditional foundations and more contemporary leadership, even if it's, a Caucasian person leading the foundation, but they're open and honest and can have true dialogue about how things have been done in the past, then an opportunity exists for things to change on a going forward basis and have more direct relationship, especially funding relationships with those organizations that have direct ties to the communities that they are attempting to serve. Mm-hmm. And so I think some time needs to be focused on that because significant amounts of money are being given, and I don't think the impact is being had through these large foundations, especially as it relates to our communities, because they aren't working in conjunction with the organizations that are on the ground, especially organizations run by people of color who are on the ground solving for those problems in those communities.
Sure. So I'm going to close us and move us and turn the floor over to Mark. Donna, we lost you. Oh, no, that's Donna in the background work. First of all, I just want to thank our panelists. You guys did a fantastic job. And the things that I'm walking away with is, first of all, commitment to execution, commitment to excellence, building trust, and having an eye towards generational wealth building and generational social capital building. Fantastic. Well said. Mark Lewis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Well, first, thanks everyone for this extremely enriching conversation. Just listening to the conversation, I think we can kick off about 5 or 10 more webinars just to address some of the topics that were brought up today. Again, my name is Mark Lewis. I'm the president and CEO of the Poise Foundation. We're a 41-year-old Black community foundation located in Pittsburgh, but focused on helping donors across the country execute their charitable goals in helping the Black community. I want to thank, first of all, our great moderator, Joe. You did a great job. Kept us on time. That's always the first priority of a great moderator. And for guiding this discussion, we really appreciate you and hope to be in contact, in touch to learn more about your work and see how we can partner further. To Donna, Herschel, and Greg, you all provided amazing insight and wisdom that we should all hold close. I think what I take away from this conversation is whether we are talking about business or philanthropy, we need to focus on our strengths. We need to compete and operate with excellence and be good and great examples for the young people that are coming behind us, as well as prepare the space for them. Black people can and should have the biggest impact on the Black community. And growing our businesses and institutional philanthropy is foundational to our success. And the best part of it is, as you've seen today, we don't have to start from ground zero. We have successful businesses, we have successful foundations, all that you've seen represented here. The one comment that I will state is, we talked about how to make room for people. I can't remember if it was Donna or Herschel that mentioned there are 2 million Black businesses, and most of them are, one-person shops. If each of those businesses hired one person, one additional person, that's another 2 million Black people that we can employ. So we need to think about, how we can take control of our own narrative, but also can take control of our own destiny. I think our next step is, and most important one, is how do we support and utilize our own organizations, be it foundations, be it businesses, be it other nonprofits, organizations in our community.
All right. So we have a little bit of technical difficulties. Like Joe has already stated, we've been doing this long enough to know that you got to roll with the punches, especially when it comes to technology. And so we just want to go ahead and close it out by just saying thank you, the audience, for joining us. We hope that you have been challenged. I hope that you have been encouraged to go and continue to do the work. And I'm going to encourage you to look up each one of these organizations. Look up the Prosperity Foundation. Look up the Penny Foundation. Look up the Poise Foundation, and figure out how you can to support. At Penny Foundation, I'll close it out by saying what we always say to Penny Foundation. We seek to bring power of people's pennies and to build power so that we can move forward and to support our community. So with that, hope everybody has a great rest of the day, and we look forward to seeing you on the next broadcast. Thank you.